Hey everybody, it's Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast, and this is the 5th episode out of 5. We did one talk this week. We divided up over 4 parts, a bonus week for Christmas season on Matthew chapter 2 and Christmassy parts of the Bible. I'm having fun with that. Also, I'm having fun with Nehemiah, which is the new season, the new book that we're getting started on Monday. As I'm sitting here recording, this is coming up on Monday. So the first weekday of the new year, we're getting rolling on that. And also, we've been packing things up to send you all the little field notes books for Nehemiah and to send everybody who's a supporter also the Achievement Unlocked, the Esther achievement sticker, which is awesome with gold outline. It's limited edition. It's sweet. You're going to dig it. So yeah, this is 5th out of 5. It's been a fun week and I'm excited to get started on Nehemiah here next time around. All right, let's get after it. One of the things that when you study history, when you study the Bible, anything like this, that really helps to make sense of it, I think, is to assume that the people are sane and that they did things that made sense in their context. And if we do that, I think the star, even though we might not be able to picture it, becomes a much more compelling image. It must have been a big deal or they wouldn't have done what they did. And I think this dream, we might be picture like, oh, weird dream I had this one time. I sort of remember it, let me tell you. This dream must have been something very different than what we usually experience for them to take the kind of risk that they took to go back to their country by a different route. So what a strange passage. This one kind of gets a pass because it comes up at Christmas and it's warm and nice and lots of fun to sing songs are written about it. This is more like a charming anecdote. It feels more like that to me than even Bible, just because of what we've done with it. But when you really break the thing down, I think it's obviously included under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit through the author Matthew for a couple of reasons. One, it addresses an obvious historical question for the original audience. How did Jesus fit in with all those babies getting killed? Because this slaughter happened. Herod ordered it. And what Matthew is doing is filling in the gaps for some people who might not have done the math on the thing fully yet. And the Magi are an important part of that story. And if they're not in the story, the thing doesn't make sense. So we're answering that historical question. We're also answering the historical question of how would Herod respond? Remember Herod? Like the weirdest guy who's ever lived here? The most eccentric, rash, insane person? The dude who people bring up in arguments maybe 100 years after Herod is dead, the way we bring up Hitler in arguments? Like the worst guy who's ever been here? Seems like he wouldn't be real excited about somebody coming along and claiming to be a king. So if Jesus was really the king, how come Herod didn't kill him? That would be a good skeptical question for someone to ask. This addresses that skepticism. It's a very important part of the narrative. I think there's another part that's easily lost on us as a modern audience. I think this passage is in here because from the beginning, it demonstrates a connection to the larger Jewish community and not just to Israel. These guys were from Babylon, Persia. They were from the place that Balaam was from, the guy who couldn't get his donkey to cooperate and was supposed to curse Israel way back in the book of Numbers, but instead blessed Israel. And that blessing involves this scepter and this star. Oh, weird. There's a prophecy about a star and the Messiah that comes from a guy who's from the same place these guys are from. There are all kinds of connections to the East. And so what Matthew is doing here, again, easily lost on us, is saying this isn't just a Jewish thing. I know it's happening in Bethlehem. It feels Jewish. But this is much bigger and is going to involve and affect a much larger crowd. And then finally, I think this is in here for a reason that I've already referenced. I think we're supposed to contrast the religious leaders with the Magi. The people who should have got it didn't get it. The people who had no business getting it got it. Now, if we take that and we remember that and we look for that as a theme throughout the rest of our study of the book of Matthew, promise you, it's going to come up once or twice. And by once or twice, I mean like in every single chapter. One of the great ironies of the whole story of Jesus is that the people who should have got it didn't get it, and the people who should have been beyond help and so screwed up and so bad and so with the wrong last name and so without the right amount of money or influence, they all got it. Which I think leads us to the part where we ask, how does this affect us? Well, you got 2 templates here. You got the super enlightened, I know what I'm doing, crazy educated, self-confident, trust me, I've got the God thing figured out crowd. And you've got the, yeah, let's be honest, I'm bumbling through this a little bit. I'm bowling with the bumpers on and it isn't perfect, but I'm getting towards something that is true crowd. Apparently, there is more dignity and more rightness in being a part of the latter crowd than the prior crowd.
Was Jesus a threat to Herod? Yes. When I was a kid, I thought, Herod, you're so paranoid. That's so weird. It's a little baby. He's not going to do anything to you. He doesn't want to be king. And so I thought that because Jesus didn't want to raise an army and conquer Herod, Herod was being silly. But as I've aged a little bit and I'm coming back around to this passage, no, I get it. I really get it. Herod had seized on a bad situation. He'd made the best of the worst for himself. And if that bad situation got made right and straightened out, it was going to be ruinous for him. Jesus came with the promise of straightening out the whole mess, the whole bad situation. But it raises the bigger question. Okay, so maybe Jesus was a threat to the order that Herod had built his life around. But what about us? Is Jesus a threat to us? Is Jesus a threat to how the world is and the power structures that we're a part of now? You're already nodding, and you're right. Yes. It sounds freaky to say it, but Jesus is a threat. Not a bad threat. He's a threat to our games. He's a threat to the stupid things that we have built to selfishly seize on a bad situation. We build around the assumption that everything is broken and will stay broken. And I get it. I'm a part of it. But sometimes I think part of the reason that Jesus clashes with us and that it's not always easy to fully embrace Jesus as the king that he is because we know intuitively what Herod knew overtly, and that is, this is going to mess with my system. This will disrupt my power structure that I'm building socially, that I'm building with my money, that I'm building with my stuff. These things that we construct for ourselves. If Jesus really is king of our lives, we can't be. What would it look like for me to not effectively be king of my life? For my life to exist as an offering of service to the true king? What would it look like for me to pursue being a part of the very redemption that undermines my power structure that I've crafted for myself? I just thought it was so weird growing up why the communists were always mad about Christianity. It just didn't make sense. I grew up during the later Cold War, Red Dawn era, all of that stuff. And I just thought it was so strange. The Chinese and the Russians were hurting Christians. Like, why? They're not going to mess with your government. Like, you're fine. But I get it now. Jesus and following Christ are a huge threat to the human order. Now, they're a huge threat in a good way, because if we do this, what it means is we're laying down our rights for each other. We're laying down our rights and our pride for God. It means we're giving sacrificially to each other. It means we're meeting needs. It means we're doing right. It means we're doing justice. It means that we're concerned about people beyond ourselves. It means that we think completely differently. And ultimately, the most good and the most right comes out of following Christ. But for people who are trying to build something out of this crazy mess that we're a part of, the mess needs to be there or their role is unnecessary. And the same applies to us as individuals. I'm comfortable with just letting that tension sit there as we get through the rest of chapter 2, and then as we get into the stuff where we actually meet Jesus and hear him talk and start to get a sense of what he's doing and what he's after. So here's where I want to leave it. Jesus is a threat to you. Jesus is a threat to me. Jesus is a threat to how things are, but how things are is broken. The thing that you're building for yourself, the thing that I'm building for me, ends with separation from God and death. You get this tiny, short little run. And we make the best of it, and that's cool, but our system is not working out. We haven't been able to fix it with governments or violence or force or more taxation or less taxation or this candidate or that candidate or this king or that king. We've tried everything. For as long as humans have written things down, we've tried everything. That's the system that Jesus is a threat to. So on the one hand, it sounds kind of scary that something might step into our stuff and mess with it. But on the other hand, how's our stuff working? It's broken. It's in constant friction and tension. And part of the promise that comes with this young king is that there could be something better. That it could be better than just make the best of something horrible, put our heads down, get through it, have a couple good memories, and die. There could be something that's transcendent, that's right, that's lasting, and it could be delivered by this king. That's the promise that's being held out. Let's hold our lives and the things that we're building up against that and see what it does. Let's look at those promises that he's holding out. Let's look at the life that is in him with fresh eyes and see what it does. Every time I've taken meaningful time in my life to dig into the words and actions of Christ, I have come out different than I started.